The stars twinkled silently in the void of space as Earth's orbital defense station kept its vigilant watch. The massive structure, a testament to human engineering, floated like a guardian above the blue marble of humanity's home. Inside the command center, Admiral Park's fingers drummed steadily on the cold metal railing, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays that filled the room with an ethereal blue glow. The Confederation vessels had arrived 3 days ago, their massive forms blotting out entire star fields as they took up position in high orbit. Each ship dwarfed anything humanity had built, looking like dark mountains floating against the backdrop of space. Their design was alien, all sharp angles and crystalline protrusions that seemed to defy conventional physics. "They're hailing us again," reported Lieutenant Yoon from her communication station. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her console. Admiral Park straightened his uniform, a habit born from decades of military service. "Put them through to the main screen." The holographic display shifted, revealing the Confederation ambassador. The being was a sight that still made many humans uncomfortable. A towering crystalline entity, it seemed to be made of living diamond. Light played through its form in ways that defied explanation, creating patterns that almost looked like internal organs. "Your species continues to delay." The ambassador's voice resonated through the command center, somehow both beautiful and terrifying. "Our patience grows thin." Jin Ho, Earth's chief diplomat, stood at the center of the negotiation chamber. Her traditional hanbok, chosen specifically for this meeting, seemed to glow under the strange light emanating from the ambassador. She was small compared to the alien being, but her presence filled the room. "We have considered your offer," Jin Ho replied, her voice calm and measured, "and we have prepared a response." The crystalline being shifted, creating a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Then you will submit. Accept your place as a protectorate of the Confederation. It is the only logical choice for a species as limited as yours." Jin Ho's lips curved into a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, we have something to show you first." She gestured to her assistant, who activated a holographic display of his own. The room filled with images, centuries of human history played out in rapid succession. The rise and fall of empires, the evolution of warfare, the relentless march of technological progress. Scenes of humanity's greatest battles flashed by. From ancient armies clashing with swords to modern soldiers wielding weapons that could level cities. "You misunderstand our species," Jin Ho said quietly, her words cutting through the silence that had fallen. "We don't take kindly to threats. We never have." The alien ambassador's crystalline form flickered with what seemed like amusement. "These are primitive conflicts. You show us why you need our guidance." "Keep watching," Jin Ho commanded softly. The images continued, but now they showed humanity's resilience. Cities rebuilt from ashes, civilizations rising from the ruins of war, technological leaps born from necessity. The moon landing, Mars colonies, the development of fusion power, each achievement earned through determination and sacrifice. "In every war we fought," Jin Ho continued, "those who underestimated us paid a heavy price. We adapt. We survive. We overcome." The ambassador's amusement began to fade as the presentation continued. Now it showed Earth's hidden strengths, orbital defense platforms, energy weapons reversed engineered from recovered alien tech, armies trained in zero-gravity combat. "What you see is primitive," Admiral Park spoke up from his position. "We see as experience. Every conflict has taught us something. Every war has made us stronger." The crystalline being's internal lights pulsed rapidly, a sign of agitation that Earth's xenobiologists had identified during previous encounters. "These preparations, you knew we were coming." "We knew someone was coming," Jin Ho corrected. "Humanity has been preparing for this moment for generations. Not because we wanted war, but because we refused to be helpless when we finally met our galactic neighbors." The ambassador's form shifted, creating discordant tones. "You dare to threaten the Confederation. No, Jinho replied, her voice hard as steel. We're simply informing you of reality. You came here offering us a choice between submission and destruction. We're offering you a different choice. Respect us as equals, or discover firsthand why every power that's tried to conquer Earth has failed. Admiral Park watched as the ambassador's crystalline form twisted in what their analysts would later identify as the alien equivalent of shock. The being had come expecting to find sheep ready for shearing. Instead, they had found wolves in waiting. You will regret this defiance, the ambassador declared, but there was a new note in its harmonic voice. Uncertainty. No, Jinho said simply. We won't, but you might regret not taking this opportunity to start our relationship differently. She gestured to a stack of data pads on the table. We have prepared a counter-proposal for a mutual defense and trade agreement. I suggest you review it carefully. As the ambassador's form flickered and faded from the holographic display, Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. First contact hadn't gone as planned. But then again, when did anything involving humanity go according to someone else's plan? The real question now was whether the Confederation would learn from this encounter, or if they would need a more practical demonstration of humanity's capabilities. Either way, Earth was ready. They had been ready for a very long time. The lunar dust settled silently in the vast underground chamber as General Han's fingerprint activated the ancient control panel. The facility, carved deep beneath the moon's surface over 50 years ago, hummed to life as systems long dormant began their activation sequences. Lights flickered on in sequence, revealing row after row of advanced weaponry that had been waiting patiently for this moment. Begin Operation Revelation, Han commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. The staff around him moved with practiced precision, each person knowing their role in this carefully choreographed unveiling of humanity's true military might. On the massive display screen before them, red dots began appearing across the solar system. Each point represented a weapons platform or military installation that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Mercury's dark side, perpetually hidden from both Earth and alien observation, split open like a blooming flower as weapon platforms emerged from their thermal shielding. Young Lieutenant Kim sat at her sensor station, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls as she monitored the alien fleet's reactions. Sir, detecting massive energy spikes from the Confederation vessels. They're powering up their scanning arrays. Let them look, Han replied, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It's time they saw what they're really dealing with. The scene on Mars was particularly spectacular. The polar ice caps, which had always been assumed to be solid masses of frozen carbon dioxide and water, began to shift. Massive doors, disguised by decades of careful environmental manipulation, slid open to reveal silos housing humanity's most advanced missile systems. Incoming transmission from the Confederation flagship, Lieutenant Kim announced. They're demanding an explanation. Han straightened his uniform and nodded to the communications officer. Put them through. The crystalline ambassador appeared on screen, its form flickering with what their xenobiologists had identified as extreme agitation. What is the meaning of this? These installations violate multiple Confederation protocols. Protocols that Earth never agreed to, Han replied calmly. You see, we've known about the Confederation for quite some time. With a gesture, he brought up an image that made the ambassador's crystalline form pulse with shock. A crashed alien ship, half buried in the Gobi Desert. The image was dated 50 years ago. They thought we were primitive, Han told his staff, loud enough for the ambassador to hear. They never considered we'd found one of their crashed ships in the Gobi 50 years ago. Never thought we'd understand it, improve it. The ambassador's form twisted in what might have been anger. Impossible. That vessel was equipped with self-destruct protocols. It was, Han agreed. But you underestimated human ingenuity. We didn't just preserve the ship, we learned from it, improved upon it. Everything you see around you is the result of human innovation combined with your own technology. Lieutenant Kim's console began chirping urgently. Sir, picking up massive communications traffic between Confederation vessels. Their encryption is breaking down due to panic. She paused, listening through her earpiece. They're afraid, sir. Han walked to the main viewport, looking out at the Earth hanging in the black sky above. The Confederation fleet was visible as a collection of dark spots against the stars. Show them the Jupiter installations. Around Jupiter's largest moons, massive defense platforms shimmered into view as their cloaking fields deactivated. Each one was larger than anything humanity had publicly acknowledged building, and each bore weapons that incorporated both human and alien technology in ways the Confederation had never imagined possible. "This is only the beginning," Han informed the ambassador. "We've had half a century to prepare. Every time you watched us launch a scientific mission, every time you observed our primitive space program, you were watching us build this defense network." Lieutenant Kim's eyes widened as new data scrolled across her screen. "Sir, the Confederation fleet is falling back to a higher orbit. Their weapons systems are powering down." "As they should," Han replied. He turned back to the ambassador's image. "We could have revealed this sooner, but we wanted to see your true intentions first. Now you understand. Earth is not some primitive world ripe for conquest. We are not helpless, and we are not afraid." The ambassador's crystalline form had stopped its agitated pulsing, settling into what their experts recognize as a posture of serious consideration. "The Confederation will need to reevaluate its approach to Earth. I suggest you do that quickly," Han advised. "Because we haven't shown you everything yet. Not even close." As the transmission ended, Han looked around at his staff. Their faces showed pride, determination, and relief that humanity's long preparation had paid off. For decades, they had worked in secret, building, preparing, waiting for this moment. Lieutenant Kim's voice broke the silence. "Sir, receiving updates from all installations. Everything is operating at full capacity. The Confederation fleet is maintaining their new position, but their internal communications suggest they're in complete disarray." Han nodded, satisfied. The unveiling of humanity's hidden arsenal had achieved exactly what they'd hoped, not just a show of force, but a demonstration that humanity was far more capable than anyone had suspected. The real question now was what the Confederation would do with this new information. Looking at the sensor readings of the alien fleet's disorganized movements, Han suspected they already knew the answer. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had never been the primitive species they appeared to be. They had been preparing, waiting, and now they were ready to take their place among the stars, not as subjects, but as equals. The sleek corvette, Swift Thunder, glided silently through the wreckage of what had once been a proud Confederation supply fleet. Captain Sun's fingers traced the edge of her command console as she watched the debris field drift past her view screen. Twisted metal and crystalline shards spun lazily in the void, catching starlight like broken diamonds. "Sensor sweep complete, Captain," reported Navigator Kang from his station. "No survivors detected. Confederation rescue ships are still 20 minutes out." Sun nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Her squadron of 6 corvettes had struck with surgical precision, turning the massive alien supply ships into space debris in less than 5 minutes. The Confederation had never seen anything like it. They'd grown too comfortable with their massive dreadnoughts and battle cruisers. "Echo Squadron, form up on my position," she commanded. "Keep your stealth systems engaged. They'll be hunting us now." The human ships were technological marvels, each one a perfect blend of Earth innovation and reversed engineered alien tech. Where Confederation ships were huge and imposing, human vessels were compact and agile. While the aliens relied on brute force, humanity had perfected the art of striking from shadows. Multiple contacts. Lieutenant Min's voice cut through the bridge. 3 Confederation dreadnoughts just dropped out of FTL. They're scanning the debris field. Sun allowed herself a small smile. Right on schedule. Battle stations. Everyone. Time to show them why size isn't everything. The massive alien ships moved through space like predators, their crystalline weapons arrays glowing with barely contained energy. Each one was large enough to hold a small city, their crews numbering in the thousands. They were impressive, intimidating, and completely useless against an enemy they couldn't catch. Hit and fade. Sun ordered her squadron, just like we practiced. Echo 2 and 3, you're with me. Echo 4 through 6, prepare for attack pattern Delta. The human corvettes moved like shadows through space, their advanced stealth systems making them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. The Confederation had never bothered developing such technology. They'd always relied on overwhelming force rather than subtlety. Target acquired. Sun announced. Echo Squadron, execute. The first strike came from nowhere. 3 human corvettes appeared suddenly behind the rearmost dreadnought, their specialized weapons targeting the alien ship's propulsion systems. Before the Confederation vessel could react, precision strikes had crippled its engines. Clean hits, Min reported excitedly. Their rear shields are down. Sun's fingers danced across her tactical display. Fade out, pattern Sigma. Don't get greedy. The corvettes vanished back into the void, just as the other dreadnoughts turned to assist their wounded companion. Confederation energy weapons carved through empty space where the human ships had been moments before. They're trying to establish a defensive formation, Navigator Kang observed. But they're leaving gaps. Of course they are, Sun replied. They're still thinking like bullies, not hunters. Echo 4 through 6, you're up. Target the second dreadnought's sensor arrays. Another lightning strike. Another fade into darkness. The second dreadnought's crystalline sensor spines shattered under precise fire, leaving it half-blind and struggling to coordinate with its companions. The bridge of swift thunder was silent except for the soft beeping of instruments as Sun watched the alien ships attempt to protect themselves. Their massive weapons were useless against targets they couldn't find, their thick armor meaningless against attacks that never came head-on. Message incoming from the lead dreadnought, Min announced. They're requesting the ceasefire. Sun leaned back in her command chair. Interesting. Put it through. The alien commander's image appeared on her screen, a crystalline being pulsing with what their experts had identified as frustration and fear. This is not honorable combat, the being declared. Face us directly. Honor, Sun replied calmly. We're not interested in honor. We're interested in survival. You came to our system expecting us to fight by your rules. That was your first mistake. As if to emphasize her point, Echo Squadron struck again. This time they targeted the lead dreadnought's communication arrays, cutting off the transmission mid-protest. All ships, execute final attack pattern. Sun ordered. Let's give them something to think about on their long journey home. The 6 human corvettes appeared simultaneously, striking from different angles with perfect coordination. Their weapons found weak points that the Confederation had never thought to protect, their superior maneuverability making them impossible to counter. When it was over, 3 mighty dreadnoughts drifted powerless in space, their crews alive but their ships completely disabled. Sun's squadron regrouped at their predetermined rally point, their stealth systems already re-engaged. Confederation distress calls detected, Min reported. Their main fleet is responding, but they'll take hours to arrive. Sun nodded, satisfied. Send the recording of this engagement to command. The Confederation needs to understand. They can't beat what they can't catch, and they can't catch what they can't see. As swift thunder led her squadron away from the battlefield, Sun thought about how the aliens had underestimated humanity. They'd thought size meant power, that bigger ships meant certain victory. Instead, they'd learned a harsh lesson about humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. The stars streaked past as the corvettes entered FTL, leaving behind a scene that would send shockwaves through the Confederation. 3 of their mightiest warships, disabled by ships so small they'd once dismissed them as insignificant. It was a message written in twisted metal and shattered crystal. Humanity would not be conquered, not by force, Not by fear, not by anything. Good work, Echo Squadron. Sun transmitted to her pilots. They won't forget this lesson anytime soon. The silence in the high-security briefing room was absolute as Dr. Lee loaded her presentation. The assembled military command, representing every branch of Earth's defense forces, watched with growing unease as the holographic display initialized. Their faces were illuminated by the soft blue glow of what looked like a star system in miniature. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Lee began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. "What you're about to see is the culmination of 30 years of research. Project Prometheus has moved beyond theory. It's ready." The generals exchanged glances. They had all heard rumors about the project, whispers of a weapon that could change the course of the war with the Confederation. None of them had expected something like this. "Project Prometheus isn't just a weapon," she explained, manipulating the holographic controls. "It's an ultimatum written in Starfire. What you're looking at is a simulation of a controlled stellar detonation." The star in the display began to pulse, its surface roiling with increased activity. Admiral Choi leaned forward, his weathered face creased with concern. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Doctor?" Dr. Lee nodded, adjusting her glasses. "We can trigger a star to go nova. Not just randomly. We can control it, direct it, use it." She paused, letting that sink in. "We can target any star they depend on. Their core worlds, their colonies, their trade routes, everything." General Yoon, a veteran of the first alien encounters, stood up abruptly. "This is madness. You're talking about destroying entire solar systems. I'm talking about ensuring humanity's survival," Dr. Lee countered. She brought up another display showing the Confederation's territory. "They have us outnumbered. They have superior technology in many areas. But they have one critical weakness. They're spread out across thousands of star systems." The simulation continued, showing how a controlled nova would affect neighboring systems. The shockwave would disrupt space travel, interrupt communications, and make entire regions uninhabitable. "The delivery system is already in place," Dr. Lee continued. "Those scientific probes we've been launching for the past decade. Each one carries a Prometheus device. They're positioned near key Confederation stars, waiting for activation." Colonel Min, the youngest officer present, raised his hand. "What about civilian casualties?" Dr. Lee's expression softened slightly. "That's why we chose our target stars carefully. The systems we can affect are primarily military installations, resource collection points, and strategic choke points. We estimate civilian casualties would be minimal." The room erupted in heated discussion. Some officers argued this was too extreme. Others insisted it was necessary. Dr. Lee waited patiently until Admiral Choi called for order. "Show us the full simulation," he commanded. Dr. Lee nodded and expanded the holographic display. The room darkened as a complete map of known space appeared before them. Red dots indicated Confederation systems, blue showed human-controlled space, and yellow marked the positions of Prometheus devices. "Watch what happens when we activate just one device," she said quietly. The simulation played out. A star flared brilliantly, then exploded in a controlled manner. The shockwave rippled through space, disrupting nearby systems. Supply lines were cut. Military bases were isolated. Trade routes became impassable. "One detonation," Dr. Lee emphasized. "We have the capability to trigger dozens." General Park, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "The political implications will be enormous," Dr. Lee finished for him. "That's why this isn't just a weapon. It's a deterrent. The Confederation needs to understand that if they push us too far, we can make the cost of victory too high to bear." She brought up new data, showing the potential economic impact on the Confederation. Their empire is built on stable trade routes and reliable communication between systems. We can take that away. We can isolate their worlds, cut off their resources, and force them to reconsider their aggression. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. Humanity, the supposedly primitive species, had developed something that could bring the mighty Confederation to its knees. How soon can it be ready? Admiral Choi asked finally. It already is, Dr. Lee replied. We've had 30 years to perfect this. Every device has been tested in simulated conditions. We know exactly what will happen when we use them. The simulation continued to play, showing various scenarios and outcomes. The generals watched, their initial horror gradually giving way to grim understanding. This was what humanity had come to, developing the ability to destroy stars to ensure their own survival. The Confederation must never know about this, Colonel Min said quietly. Not until we have to use it. Dr. Lee shook her head. On the contrary, they need to know. The entire point of a deterrent is that your enemy knows you have it. They need to understand that if they push us too far, we can and will respond with overwhelming force. She brought up one final simulation, a cascade of stellar detonations that would effectively cut the Confederation's territory in half. This isn't just about winning battles anymore. This is about making them understand that war with humanity is simply too costly to pursue. As the presentation ended, Admiral Choi stood up. Thank you, Dr. Lee. We'll need time to discuss this and make our recommendations to the civilian government. Dr. Lee gathered her materials, but paused before leaving. Just remember, every day we wait, the Confederation pushes further into our territory. They think they're dealing with a primitive species that can be easily conquered. Maybe it's time they learn just how far it will go to remain free. The door closed behind her, leaving the military command to contemplate what they had seen. Humanity had created something terrible in the name of survival, the power to make stars die at their command. The question now was not whether they would use it, but when. Representative Song maintained perfect composure as the Confederation Council chamber descended into chaos around her. The massive crystalline chamber, designed to showcase the Confederation's power and unity, now echoed with angry voices from a dozen different species. The elegant lighting that usually pulsed in calming patterns now flickered erratically, reflecting the tension in the room. The humans must be stopped immediately, thundered the Vex delegate, his metallic scales rattling with agitation. Their very existence threatens everything we've built. And how do you propose we do that? Countered another delegate, this one a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit. Did you not see what they did to our supply fleets? To our dreadnoughts? Song sat quietly, observing everything. Her traditional Earth formal wear stood out among the exotic garments and environmental suits of the alien delegates. She had chosen to wear it specifically for this session, a reminder that humanity would not abandon its identity or its pride. The head of the council, a towering crystalline being similar to the first ambassador who had visited Earth, tried to restore order. We must approach this situation with logic and logic. Interrupted a massive creature that appeared to be made of living stone. Was it logical to underestimate them? Was it logical to ignore the warnings about their military capabilities? Song's datapad vibrated softly. A message appeared, encrypted using protocols that even the Confederation couldn't crack. It was from the Nai, one of the smaller species that had been forcibly integrated into the Confederation centuries ago. They wanted to talk. Privately. The chaos in the chamber continued to grow. Some species were demanding immediate withdrawal from human space. Others called for an all-out war, insisting that humanity needed to be crushed before they became even stronger. A few suggested diplomatic solutions, but their voices were drowned out by the more aggressive factions. Representative Song. The council head's voice cut through the noise. You have been unusually quiet during these proceedings. Does Earth have nothing to say? Song stood slowly, her movement drawing all eyes in the chamber. Earth has already said everything that needs to be said. We want peace, but we will not submit to tyranny. The choice is yours. Threats, shouted the Vex delegate. Even here they threaten us. No, Song replied calmly. Simply facts. We've demonstrated our capabilities. We've shown our resolve. Now you must decide how to proceed. As she spoke, her datapad continued to fill with encrypted messages, not just from the Nye now, but from other species as well. Smaller powers that had been bullied into joining the Confederation, older civilizations that had grown weary of its expanding control. The Council head's crystalline form pulsed with what Song's cultural training identified as frustration. Perhaps we should recess to allow tempers to cool. Song nodded politely and left the chamber, her steps measured and unhurried. In a private room nearby, she activated her secure communications device. The holographic face of a Nye representative appeared. Their species resembled Earth's ancient descriptions of elves, though with iridescent skin. Representative Song. The Nye spoke softly, their musical voice filled with hope. We've been watching Earth's resistance with great interest. As have we all, added another voice as a new figure joined the call. A representative of the Coal, a species that had once ruled a dozen systems before the Confederation protected them into submission. More joined the call, 6 species in total, each with their own grievances against the Confederation, each seeing in humanity's defiance a chance for change. The Confederation is fracturing, the Nye representative observed. Their air of invincibility is gone, thanks to Earth. Song studied each face carefully. What exactly are you proposing? An alliance, the Coal representative answered. Not official, not yet, but support, information sharing, coordination. The Confederation has ruled through fear and overwhelming force for too long. Added another alien, this one a being of pure thought housed in a mechanical body. They never expected resistance, never planned for it. Song considered their words carefully. This was an opportunity, but also a risk. And if the Confederation discovers these talks? The Nye representative's skin shimmed with what their cultural briefing identified as determination. Let them. We're tired of living in fear. Humanity has shown us that resistance is possible. Back in the council chamber, the arguments continued. Song could hear them through the walls, the various factions growing more divided by the moment. The Confederation's perfect unity was cracking, and through those cracks, hope was growing. Very well, Song agreed finally. We'll establish secure channels for communication. But remember, Earth fights for its own freedom first. We won't be used as a tool in someone else's rebellion. The alien representatives agreed readily. They didn't need Earth to fight their battles. They just needed to know it could be done. Humanity's resistance had shown them that the Confederation wasn't invincible, that its power could be challenged. As Song prepared to return to the council chamber, she reflected on how quickly things had changed. A month ago, the Confederation had fought to simply absorb Earth into their empire. Now they faced not just human resistance, but the stirrings of rebellion from within their own ranks. The political fallout was spreading like ripples in a pond, reaching further than anyone had expected. The Confederation's iron grip on power was weakening, and in the chaos that followed, new alliances were forming. Song smoothed her clothing and checked her datapad one last time. The council session would reconvene soon, and the arguments would continue. But now she knew something they didn't. The mighty Confederation was no longer fighting just humanity. They were fighting the very empire they had built, the fear they had cultivated, the oppression they had normalized. And that Song reflected as she walked back toward the chamber, might prove to be their greatest challenge yet. The message was simple, direct, and terrifying. Admiral Park's face appeared simultaneously on every Confederation communication device, from the largest command screens to the smallest personal computers. His weathered features showed no anger, no emotion, just pure determination. You have 24 hours. His voice resonated through every channel. Withdraw your forces or we demonstrate the Torch Protocol on the uninhabited Proxima system. In the depths of her lunar laboratory, Dr. Lee watched the transmission while making final adjustments to the Prometheus device. Her hands moved steadily over the controls despite the weight of what she was about to do. The device hummed softly, its core pulsing with energies that could reshape stars. All systems are ready, reported her assistant, checking the final diagnostics. The device near Proxima is responding to commands. Dr. Lee nodded, her eyes fixed on the monitoring screens. Decades of research, countless sleepless nights, and the combined efforts of Earth's finest minds had led to this moment. The device was never meant to be used. It was supposed to be a deterrent, a last resort. But the Confederation had pushed them too far. In the Confederation High Command, panic spread like wildfire. The crystalline beings that made up their leadership cast fractured light across the chamber as they moved in agitation. They cannot possibly have such capability, one leader insisted. It must be a bluff. Can we take that chance? Another countered. Their other demonstrations of power have all proved real. The countdown continued relentlessly. 20 hours, 15, 10. The Confederation fleet remained in position, their leaders paralyzed by indecision and pride. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays. Any response? Nothing official, his communications officer replied. But we're detecting massive communication traffic between their ships. They're arguing among themselves. At the 5-hour mark, Dr. Lee began the power-up sequence. The Prometheus device near Proxima started to awaken, its ancient energies stirring. The star itself seemed to sense what was coming, its surface beginning to ripple with unusual activity. Last chance, Admiral Park broadcast again. Your pride isn't worth the price you'll pay. 3 hours. 2. 1. Still no withdrawal, the communications officer reported, tension evident in his voice. Admiral Park's expression hardened. Very well. Dr. Lee, you may proceed. In her lab, Dr. Lee took a deep breath. Her finger hovered over the final activation control. Initiating torch protocol, she announced, her voice steady. May whatever gods they believe in forgive us. The command was sent. Near Proxima, the Prometheus device fully awakened. It reached out with forces humanity had spent decades learning to control, touching the star's core, adjusting its fundamental processes. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, Proxima began to change. Its surface churned with increasingly violent activity. Solar flares erupted on an unprecedented scale. The star's color shifted, becoming brighter, hotter. Energy readings are off the scale, Dr. Lee's assistant reported. The reaction is proceeding exactly as calculated. The Confederation's leaders watched in horror as their instruments recorded what should have been impossible. A star was dying. Not naturally, not over millions of years, but in minutes, controlled and directed by human technology. Proxima flared like a new dawn, its light momentarily outshining everything else in the system. Then, just as suddenly, it dimmed. The star didn't explode. That wasn't the plan. Instead, it was transformed, its power reduced to a fraction of its former self. Demonstration complete. Admiral Park announced to the stunned Confederation. The star will stabilize at 10% of its previous output. Uninhabitable, but not destroyed. We can do this to any star in your territory. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawal. The response came within minutes. The Confederation fleet began to move, their mighty ships turning away from Earth, retreating into the depths of space. In her lab, Dr. Lee slumped in her chair. It worked, she whispered. It actually worked. Did we do the right thing? Her assistant asked quietly. Dr. Lee looked at the readings from Proxima, a star forever changed by human hands. We did what we had to do. They needed to understand that we weren't bluffing, that we could and would defend ourselves by any means necessary. Admiral Park watched the Confederation fleet's retreat on his tactical display. Send word to all Earth forces. Operation Torch is complete. The ultimatum has been accepted. As the news spread, a mix of relief and unease swept through Earth's military and scientific communities. They had won, but at what cost? They had revealed their greatest weapon, shown the galaxy that humanity could control the very stars themselves. But perhaps that was necessary. Perhaps the galaxy needed to understand that the species they had dismissed as primitive had grown into something far more powerful than anyone had imagined. As the last Confederation ship disappeared into FTL, Admiral Park turned to his crew. "Send a message to Dr. Lee. Tell her to begin powering down the remaining devices. The demonstration is over." Proxima continued to burn, dimmed but not destroyed, a permanent reminder of humanity's resolve. The ultimatum had worked, but everyone knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new era, one where humanity would be feared as much as it was respected. And in her lunar lab, Dr. Lee began the process of safeguarding their terrible weapon, hoping it would never need to be used again, but knowing that it probably would. The grand ceremonial hall aboard the neutral space station glowed with soft light, illuminating representatives from 100 different species. The massive viewing windows showed Earth in the distance, a beautiful blue marble suspended in space. Jinho stood before the gathered delegates, her traditional formal wear a stark contrast to the exotic environmental suits and crystalline forms around her. The peace treaty lay before them on an ancient wooden table, Earth's contribution to the ceremony. The document itself was both digital and physical, a symbol of bridging different technological traditions. "The terms are fair," Jinho stated, her voice carrying through the hall. "Earth will maintain its independence. The Confederation acknowledges our sovereign space and our right to self-defense. In return, we share certain non-military technologies and establish regular trade relations." The Confederation's prime speaker, a crystalline being more elaborate than any previously seen, moved forward. "We agree to these terms, though some among us still question the wisdom of treating the younger species as equals." Jinho's slight smile never wavered. Age does not always equal wisdom, as recent events have shown. We never wanted war. We simply refused to be slaves. Remember that. And we'll have no quarrel. In his lunar office, General Han watched the ceremony through a secure feed. His displays showed not just the proceedings, but the positions of every Confederation ship still in the solar system. Their once mighty fleet was preparing for final departure. "Quite a change from their first arrival," his aide commented, setting down a report on recent fleet movements. Han nodded, remembering the Confederation's arrogant demands for submission. They thought size and age meant they could dictate terms. They never understood that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or technology. It's our determination. The treaty signing proceeded with ancient formalities from a dozen cultures. Each species added their mark in their own way: crystalline resonance patterns, energy signatures, traditional ink on paper. Jinho signed last, her elegant signature representing not just Earth, but all of humanity's colonies and outposts. "Let this mark a new beginning," the Prime Speaker announced, a recognition that the galaxy's younger species may have much to teach the old. In various hidden locations throughout Earth's space, monitoring stations tracked the departure of the Confederation fleet. Dr. Lee watched from her own laboratory as the mighty ships entered FTL, leaving behind a changed galaxy. "Do you think they'll honor the treaty?" her assistant asked, checking the status of their defensive systems one last time. "They'll honor it," Dr. Lee replied confidently, "not just because they fear the Torch Protocol, but because we've shown them something they never expected: that humanity can be both powerful and merciful." Back in the ceremonial hall, Jinho concluded her remarks to the assembled representatives. "Earth opens its arms to peaceful trade and cultural exchange. We look forward to learning from all of you, as equals in this vast galaxy." The smaller species that had secretly contacted Earth during the crisis now moved forward openly, establishing diplomatic relations. The Nye, the Cole, and others who had suffered under Confederation dominance saw in humanity a model for their own independence. General Han's final display showed a strategic map of known space. The power dynamics had shifted dramatically. Where once the Confederation had dominated everything, now new alliances were forming. Independent worlds were asserting their rights. Trade routes were being redrawn. Humanity's determination had transformed a threat into an opportunity. Han mused aloud. The stars are no longer a danger. They're a promise. As the ceremony concluded, Jin Ho took one last look at Earth through the station's windows. They had done more than just survive. They had reshaped the galaxy's political landscape. Humanity had proved itself not just capable of existing among the stars, but of rewriting the rules of galactic society. The next few years would be crucial. New trade agreements needed to be established. Cultural exchanges had to be managed. Defense treaties with newly independent worlds needed to be negotiated. But for the first time, it would all be done as equals, not as subjects. As the last Confederation ships disappeared into FTL, their departure marked more than just the end of a conflict. It marked the beginning of a new era, one where humanity's place among the stars was secured not by force alone, but by a combination of strength, wisdom, and determination. In his office, General Han closed his displays and walked to his own window, looking out at the stars. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humanity's resolve. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity would face it on their own terms, standing proud among the stars. The end.